Lots of woods, lots of swamps, lots of deep forest, and a region that historically held a big resistance of partisans that fought against Nazi occupation. It's a very interesting location because here was the headquarters of partisans. And it just so happens that I have a place close to here. So I'm blessed to be able to report to you from a beautiful forest in a region that not many of you will ever get a chance to see. I want to talk about the peace initiatives that have been on work. So right now we are August 6th, and I believe Steve Witkoff, the U.S. delegation, has arrived in Moscow and is talking with Putin about peace. Trump, who kind of freaked out about Medvedev, who is the previous president of the Russian Federation, who made comments about the dead man's hand. Those of you who don't understand what the dead man's hand is, it's purely a defensive mechanism, whereas if Russia was to be attacked in a preemptive nuclear war, where command structures would be incapacitated, the dead man's hand would come to life and trigger a nuclear response, annihilating the threat in the West. And pretty much we would be talking about the entire devastation of the Western and this region's world. We would all be vaporized by nuclear weapons. I just wanted to talk about Trump's reaction to this, where, he claims to have repositioned 2 nuclear submarines because of the comments from Dmitry Medvedev, Security Council here in Russia. And I think it's kind of disconcerting that, you have a reaction of a sitting president who is the head of the state of the United States, be so reactionary on Twitter about a comment. And what it shows me and what really concerns me is not that he reacted to it, but that he is repositioning nuclear submarines based off a Twitter feed of someone's opinion within the Russian Federation, who is not the head of state and who is not the president. And the reason why it's even more disturbing to me is that it can't be construed as a threat, because the dead man hands is completely defensive in nature, which demonstrates to me that Donald Trump has no idea what he was talking about and just flew into a rage to respond about this Twitter by Dmitry Medvedev. So I think it's very problematic that you have a president who's trying to broker a peace between Ukraine and Russia when it's obvious he has a big lack of understanding about these kind of matters. And I've, in my previous trajectory comments, talked about back when the Istanbul agreements meetings were happening, that I didn't foresee the Trump administration being able to successfully negotiate anything, just because they didn't have the wherewithal and the administrative capability of processing such a requirement that is going to be asked by the Russian Federation. So for those of you who don't understand, the Russian Federation is pretty clear on what it wants to achieve. Its stated goals of the special military operation are very clear, and that there is a path to peace. But unfortunately, Western elite political circles are not interested in having a peace. So without addressing the causes of the special military operation that go back very far back to 2008, 2014, Maidan, and, a pretty consistent message that NATO should not be expanding and should never consider Ukraine as a NATO partner that could be used as some state to be used as a wrecking ball against the Russian Federation. So that being said, I hope that there's going to be a peace, but I think we're at probably getting to a critical mass of place where nuclear weapons potentially can be deployed. And if not nuclear weapons, definitely hypersonic, kinetic uh, missile systems that used to be outlawed within the INF treaties that are no longer applicable. Russian Federation has saw fit to pull itself out of those treaties because of the behavior of Western nations supporting Ukraine. So the world has just gotten into a much more dangerous position. And, I'm praying for peace, skeptical that anything positive will come from Witkoff's meetings in Moscow. Um, I think it's kind of laughable that the Trump administration and the American imperial banking system, called the Federal Reserve, and sanctions regimes across the world are likely to not be able to be very successful in stopping the Russian Federation achieving its special military operational goals in Ukraine. One final note I wanted to say about the potential for false flags to occur now. We're at such a critical point in the conflict that I want everybody to be aware that it would be very easy for Western powers to do a false flag attack against Russian shadow fleets in order to create a buzz that all ships need to be detained or pulled over, and understand that that would bring it such an escalation to this conflict that it's very likely that this card is going to be played very soon because of how the battlefield is shaping within the Ukrainian territory, and the movement of troops and the degradation of the Ukrainian armed forces is currently experiencing. And we just saw Zelensky travel to the front line. Which is usually a harbinger that some significant parts of Ukraine are going to be lost. So when you see Zelensky go to the front lines and hand out medals, it's not that those units and those areas are probably not long for those positions. So again, be on the watch for false flag attacks at this point, because that's very highly probable. And I'm hoping that we would get to, I'm hoping we don't have World War spark, but I mean, it's very close, if not already started at this point. And again, I'm here in Russia. I'm not being coerced to make a video. I'm not being asked to join the Russian Federation on the front lines. I'm not being force mobilized. I'm not seeing any evidence of force mobilization. I only see that probably happening through Telegram sources from the other side. What I do think is that, if you're a foreigner and you're thinking of going to, and you're in a foreign military and you want to go help in Ukraine, the high probability you won't make it out of there at this point. Because, as this conflict wears on, a lot of Ukrainians themselves seem to be understanding that they're being used as cannon fodder for the West, and that it makes it a little bit easier for intelligence to be shared within the territory, because a lot of Ukrainians themselves are upset with the regime there. So I don't think anybody would be safe in Ukraine who's trying to harm and send munitions towards the Russian Federation. It's not a path to peace, and the course needs to change. It's not a path to peace, and the course needs to change. And it's Western leadership that needs to change directions, not the Russian Federation. If you're waiting for the Russian Federation to collapse economically, you have a nightmare coming your way.